Rece, you ever eaten any taco casa in Tuscaloosa?
Man, plenty of time. Taco Casa, a great delicacy in Tuscaloosa.
What
They
is?
should think about expanding north.
Would you? Hey, they ship, Rece. We could ship you some burritos or tacos. They're shipping that stuff now. So.
Are they really?
Yeah.
Now you shouldn't have told me that, Barry. I don't need to know that.
Good morning, Rece.
Good morning. How are you, Coach?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good.
I've got a Big 12 question I want to ask you. Everybody thinks, I guess I ought to ask you SEC, but Barry can do that. We've got a Big 12 that seems, with the 10 teams, seems to get a little bit of lack of respect because, number one, they have to play each other. Number two, the playoff is going to be with two teams that have already played each other, and that's going to cause confusion. Because they play each other, they don't play as many outside foes as the other leagues. I know they maybe not as good defensively as a league, but comment on the problems the Big 12 has and maybe what they can overcome.
Well, the first thing is I agree with you, and I've said this to people from the Big 12. I don't understand this need for a conference championship game when you've already played everybody. Now, if they want to say we're playing a conference championship game because we want to make more money, then I'm okay with that. I mean, making money is a good enough reason, and that's fine. But they don't. The playoff selection committee doesn't need another data point, or they shouldn't. If they do, then we need different people on the committee because everybody has, whether you're in the Big 12 or any other conference, you have 9 to 10. Maybe there are a couple of teams that might play 11 games that really are worthy of evaluation. The other two are throwaway games or guaranteed games or whatever. If you can't make the decision based on 10 to 11 relevant data points, then somebody else needs to be making the decision. Now, I think actually that the people in that room are fully capable of deciding. So the Big 12 wants to have a championship game to make some money. That's fine. But over the Big 12's history, far more times they've had a worthy championship contending team knocked out just by being upset. You know, you think back to Texas A&M beating Bill Snyder's best team at Kansas State. Texas did it to Nebraska one year. They've had teams knocked out of the championship picture more often than not by upsets. The SEC is really just sort of fortunate that hasn't happened very often. I guess Saban's LSU team did it to Tennessee one year, and off the top of my head, I can't really think of another time. So there's that portion of it. The other part, in terms of the Big 12, I really think probably they need Oklahoma to continue to be successful and consistent, and they need Texas to rise up a little bit because that'll typically they're able to recruit on the same level in terms of size on the defensive line and stuff like that, and are able to compete with the elite teams and some of the other ones. TCU has been able to do that a little bit as well, largely through coaching. But a lot of the other teams have had trouble consistently being able to match up with, teams that are built and made like Ohio State or Florida State or Alabama or whoever it might be.
We're talking with Rece Davis. Rece, I saw y'all sit down with all the coaches, and I was interested in the one with Tom Herman. And as you go around these programs, Dad and I talk all the time about culture and atmosphere, and I can just hear Tom Herman talk. He told the story about the captain or one of his more important, forgetting his water bottle for practice. Why can't other coaches maybe adapt that same type of culture? When I think of Tom Herman, I think, man, he's going to really clean that thing up. They're going to be disciplined. I think Nick Saban's like that. But it seems like some program you say, hey, what's the culture? What's the atmosphere there? And you don't really know. Why do some coaches get that and some coaches don't?
Both of you guys with your coaching backgrounds could probably answer that better than I can. My impression of it is that the first thing is that the players have to believe that you're sincere about it, and it needs to be consistent, and they have to understand, not in this new wave thing of players have to understand why, but if it's just some random don't forget your water bottle thing, then 18 to 21-year-old kids are going to go, man, is he kidding me right now? But if they think there's a purpose or a method behind it, or if it's part of a bigger overall picture that everybody's bought into because they believe the coach is sincere about it and they believe that there's a path to success at the end of it, then I think that they respond well to it. And I think Barry, it's difficult in our everyday lives to establish that type of discipline and culture and what we try to do, and especially if you're responsible for people in an organization, it's difficult to do so. And therefore, it's not as simple as a coach coming in, taking over a program, setting rules, and having everybody jump on board and follow it. Because, look, I was around, Tom's taking over for Charlie Strong. I was around Charlie's programs at Louisville quite a bit, and at Texas some too. They never struck me as an undisciplined program. In fact, quite the contrary. It struck me as very disciplined. So now there's this notion, I think, that Tom's coming in and that everything's been sort of running amok. And I don't believe that was the case. I mean, Charlie's a disciplined dude. Charlie's a guy who typically has people follow him. There were a multitude of reasons, some Charlie's fault, some not, of why it didn't work at Texas. It just kind of didn't, But and I think that sort of speaks to how difficult it is to establish that culture you're talking about and have it be successful.
Yeah.
And to kind of pull it back to where you guys are, that's what makes it all the more remarkable that you're, a decade or more now, a little over a decade of having this work in Tuscaloosa the way Nick's done it. And it's a remarkable thing.
Rece, this is not a negative question, I don't think, but it's kind of interesting to me. You have 4 teams, and you have Oklahoma and Ohio State playing third game of the season, second, whatever it is, Alabama and Florida State. And the process, I always think about a game where one of the teams gets beat 14 points. Then the answer when I ask that is, well, time will cover that, and I understand time will cover it if you win, but it does put you in a situation where the time that you need to recover is a difficult time, and it's a time where you try to get yourself back and win every game. And although I know that ESPN, everybody's so excited about these games being up, there's also maybe a little bit of another side to it.
You mean in terms of if you dump one of those, if you lose that game?
If you get beat 14 points, 20 points.
Yeah. If you do, and scenario I laid out yesterday on SportsCenter that in terms of the Alabama-Florida State game particularly, and maybe to a lesser degree Ohio State and Oklahoma, although I guess if Oklahoma's really strong, it could be the exact same thing. You let either of those games be a 3-point game, and then the loser of that game goes on and loses another close conference game, but still wins the league. Particularly, I think, if it's the Big Ten or the ACC or the SEC.
That's right. What I'm talking about.
You're really going to sit there and say though that a 2-loss champion's not getting in. I sort of think they might, but under your scenario, if it's a 14-point loss, a solid spanking, I think you're exactly right. I think it makes it a little more difficult for that team and makes it a little bit easier if Alabama or Florida State were to lose that game by 2 touchdowns, come back and win their league, and then maybe the other league champions are very deserving or whatever. I think it makes it a little bit tougher then. So I think you're right. But the counter that I would say to it is that the only reason Ohio State got into the playoff last year as a non-champion was the fact that they had that win over Oklahoma on their resume. Now that, along with the fact that Penn State had lost another game, and to your earlier point, got drilled by Michigan. That
Good point.
I think that also helped leave Penn State out. So it's more, they say this all the time, but I totally agree with it. It's far more art than science with those guys ranking the teams in terms of who's going to make the playoffs. But you're right. If in those 2 games particularly, if somebody gets stumped, it is going to be there will be no margin for error. If it's a field goal game or a late touchdown that makes it a 6 or 7 point win, then I think there is a little bit of margin for error for the loser in that case.
Good.
Rece, Dad had a perception that he was a mean, tough, bad guy. That was his perception.
People around me thought I was.
Yeah, but here's my point. Let me ask my question. Nick Saban has a perception that he's all work, never fun, this, that, and the other. But when I see him sit down with you on a one-on-one up there, and when the camera's off, Nick Saban is a different guy than maybe what people perceive him to be, isn't he?
He's a really engaging and interesting guy. He's one of the more interesting guys I've ever been around in coaching. Now, he's not now maybe with his closest friends, and I'm certainly not one of those. Maybe he's a cut up, but he's not. He's not a goof around, cut up with just everybody he comes in contact with. But I do think that guys who played for him will tell you he's got a great sense of humor. He'll jab at you too. He likes to take little jabs, like all of us as guys like to do. I think he's not what people have perceived. That every second of every day he's sitting there, locked in on tape and thinking who he can yell at next. That's not how he is, and that's not how your dad was. I mean, I've heard stories about your dad going to the locker room door, listening in there, and seeing how the locker room sounded to see if he thought they were ready to play or not.
Yeah.
And he'd get tickled if they were kind of mad at him, because if they were mad at him, then he figured they were ready to play. Is that right, Wimp? Is that the way it was?
That is a little bit true. I was in all that.
A little bit true.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I want to just quickly ask you, with the graduate transfer rule, are coaches, do they check any academics as much as they used to? Are they slowing down on that a little bit behind the scenes?
A couple of things. I think that a coach's responsibility as it pertains to a graduate transfer, if a guy comes to them, and I'm not talking about tampering here, but if they get word that a guy wants to come play for them as a graduate transfer, then I think the true answer is the coach is going, do we have a program that he can get into that's not at his school so he can be eligible? And actually, I think that's fine, Coach, because if they have their degree, if they've done that, and they want to come play somewhere else, then they ought to be able to. I've got no problem with it whatsoever. My only problem academically is some of the stuff that you hear, and I realize that guys have to make choices sometimes academically. But if you have a capable student who's also an athlete and he wants to major in whatever, and you tell him, no, don't do that because I don't want you spending time away from your sport, then that's, then I have a problem with that. Making a choice is a little bit of a different thing. Chris Spatola, and you guys probably know him, he hosts a radio show, great guy, works for us in basketball, and Chris is, Mike Krzyzewski's son-in-law. And I heard him tell a story recently of a player that they had, several years ago at Duke, who was taking a very difficult major and was also a basketball player, and was in a situation where he was doing neither well because of the demands of both. In that situation, a guy has to make a choice if he is not capable of doing both as well as he would like. But as long as they're not being told you can't pursue this field of study because you're a basketball player or a football player, and we don't want you to do that because we want your 99% focus to be on the sport, I've got a problem with that. But it's a little bit different if you allow someone to try and they can't do either well. Then that person, like we all do in life, has to make a choice. I can't do these two things well. I'm going to do one of them well, and maybe the other one has. I won't even say sacrifice. The other one has to be adjusted. Put it
well, before you leave, I know Barry has something else. I don't want to keep the show. I wanted to ask you about your son. I know he's playing for Princeton, playing baseball, and is a good player. Had a accident or something, and is trying to get well. Tell our listeners about that.
We had a really serious injury in a game at Maryland in the spring, which resulted in him losing his spleen. But thankfully, the doctors took care of him. Oddly enough, the same doctors who were on the scene and took care of the congressman who were shot at the baseball practice actually had some of the same doctors. They took care of him. His college season was over as a result of that, but he played in a summer collegiate league here in New England and played exceptionally well. Was an all-star, and scouts named him top prospect. Led the league in stolen bases, so he had a really good season. So we're really proud of him and happy that he's recovered so well.
Well, I wanted to find that out. I needed something like that to happen, but I wasn't exactly what it was.
Doing better. Yeah. All right, Rece, before we let you go, we're obviously in Tuscaloosa, so we got to talk one men of Florida State, Alabama. Everybody says the only reason Clemson won last year was because of Deshaun Watson. Is this quarterback for Florida State? Is he good enough to carry this team and beat Alabama?
Yes. Short answer to that is yes. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you he's as good as Deshaun Watson right now, who was as good a college quarterback as we've seen in recent years. But I really think DeAndre Francois is an outstanding quarterback. He's a terrific passer. He's tough. I mean, I don't think anyone took more vicious hits than DeAndre Francois did last year and continued to get up, come back in the game, and continue to deliver the football. I was watching some tape of the Ole Miss game that they played the other night and threw a touchdown pass, and I mean, he got obliterated. So it started from the opening game and really didn't change over the course of the season. I think he's terrific. I think Jimbo is as good a quarterback guru and quarterback coach as there is in football. Maybe at any level, he's a terrific quarterback coach in my judgment, and I expect that Francois will be even better this year than he was a year ago. And that's been the formula. If you are going to beat Alabama, you either have to have an exceptional quarterback or have your quarterback have an exceptional day, and in some cases, both. And so, they certainly have that part of the equation. I think the good news is for Alabama is that they will probably see similar progression from Jalen Hurts. I'll throw this out there for you guys, and I probably shouldn't because I ought to save it for the show unless somebody's already said it. The Bear, Chris Felica, and I were talking yesterday. You guys do realize that and this is called stirring the pot, that Alabama's on a 3-game losing streak in games in which Lane Kiffin did not call the plays.
Oh, gee, buddy, Christmas.
That is a little trivia there for us, Reese.
How about that?
Oh, me. Wow.
I hope he doesn't hear that. Lane will be jerking his pants up saying, see, I told you y'all couldn't have done it without me.
Oh, I figured. I think for sure as soon as it's out there, that's going to be in the FAU notes.
Yeah, you think no Lane might tweet that out?
He might, yeah. I hadn't even thought about that. He very well might tweet it out with one of those big emojis that he likes to use.
He'll probably have a jail warden as his new assistant.
Yeah. Oh. All right, Reese. You guys.
I'm just going to leave that hanging out there.
Yeah.
I'm not
I thought y'all leave that one alone. Thanks, Reese.
Reese, we appreciate it. You guys are going to be in Atlanta, I'm sure, for game day.
Yeah, we'll start the weekend. We're going to Bloomington for Indiana, Ohio State on Thursday night, and then we'll go to Atlanta for Alabama, Florida State on Saturday.
Indiana, Ohio. Is that basketball or football they're playing? Oh,
yeah,
football.
that's going to be football. Well, there'll be a little intrigue there too. That'll be with
yeah.
Kevin Wilson being the OC at Ohio State now, a year after being the head coach at Indiana.
All right, Reese, get you some taco casa, man. Get it shipped up there.
Thank you very much.
Do it. That sounds like a plan. All right, guys.
Thanks, Reese.